Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Hey, ladies.
Hello.
Hello.
So we have Kerry K with us today. Kerry, I don't know where you live.
Oh, wow. I live in South Africa, and so many people hear my accent because the vast majority of people that I deal with are American or Canadian. So they hear this accent and then they go, "So where about in New Zealand are you from?" And I say, "No, I'm not from New Zealand." And they say, "Oh, so where about in Australia are you from?" And I go, "No, I'm not from Australia." So South Africa. There are many people out there who are convinced that I'm either from New Zealand or from Australia, but it's South Africa.
Wow. So I would love to hear what's happening in South Africa on a planetary level, not just spiritually, but like what's happening in the world there right now
Yeah,
that it impacts all of the
yeah,
things that are going on. Like, I don't know how the whole pandemic affected South Africa. I don't know how all this racial stuff
yeah,
that's coming out affects South Africa. I
yeah.
would love to hear that.
Well, it's been a hotbed. It's been, you know what? It's been so amazing. The stuff that we've witnessed since the beginning of lockdown, which our lockdown was more or less the end of March. So I think we went into lockdown a little bit after uh, the US did. But nonetheless, we went into lockdown under the premise, and I think this was kind of a global thing, that leaders convinced the country, oh, this is just going to be a few days. It's just to get the hospitals ready. You know, it was the same MO used in every single country that I know of. The mass populace bought into it. They did here. It was no different. All the South Africans praised the president and said, oh, "You're a hero. Thank you for saving us from this dreaded virus. We're only
Yeah.
going to be in lockdown for 21 days. And it was a very insane lockdown because they did things here that I know have not been done anywhere else. So what
Really?
they did here is they banned cigarettes. Now I don't smoke.
Yeah.
Doesn't worry me. But after lockdown, they banned cigarettes. So in other words, we were in lockdown. So smokers were under the impression that they were still going to be able to go to the shop and get cigarettes. And they were told, sorry, nope, no cigarettes are going to be available. Then they did the same thing to alcohol. They took alcohol away. So there was a mass populace that didn't know what to do with themselves. Now, for me personally, don't drink, don't smoke, no skin off my nose, but there were a lot of people who from the get-go felt as if their rights had been taken away, which of course they had. I mean, we can see globally that that's exactly what's happened. Then again, you know, similar things as we've seen on the global scene took place. In other words, uh, businesses couldn't open, people began running short of money, the government aid then became available. So fantastic. But what happened here when government aid became available is, first of all, aid was in two forms. It was food aid and financial aid.
Hmm.
Food aid, they took the right of humanitarian organizations away from them to feed hungry people. And they said the only way that hungry people can be fed is through government sanctioned institutions. So in other words, if you were an existing non-profit organization feeding people,
Hmm.
you were not allowed to do that during lockdown. As a result, a lot of people went hungry. There was food made available, but as is very typical in South Africa, the moment there's something available, corruption seeps in, and the long hand of corruption finds what it can steal. So a lot of the food aid and the food parcels landed up being siphoned and funneled to government officials that were supposed to be handing it to the hungry populace. So that was one thing. The food aid was one travesty. Food aid was only for very impoverished communities, understandable, but they denied food aid to white people. They then denied financial aid to white businesses. They said white businesses, initially they came out and said, no, 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 the government's not racist. We would never do that. And they said all people can apply and all applications for financial aid will be reviewed. It wasn't long after, like it could have been 2 weeks, something like that after, they came out and said, actually, sorry about that, it's not for white businesses. So white, poor people in this country starved and it became illegal to feed them. And I'm not saying black people didn't starve. I'm not saying colored and Indian people didn't starve either. They sure as hell did. But there was this incredible racial agenda, the likes of which I personally do not see in your everyday man on the street. I see, when I look at the everyday man on the street, I see good people who don't judge people based on the color of their skin. I see governments judging people on the color of their skin. I see that as a global government agenda to stir racial unrest. But when I see just a person on the street and I speak to that person, whether they're Indian, black, white, colored, whatever it might be, that person doesn't appear to me to be prejudiced, doesn't appear to me to be racist. And sure, yeah, there's the odd person of every race group that is unfortunately going to be racist. But my point is that it seems so purposefully stirred up. And because of the history of South Africa, this is easy pickings for those who want to stir those emotions and say, oh, look at what the white man has done to you, the white man is guilty. It's an incredibly easy thing because wounds have not been healed in this country, you know? So I want to share an interesting thing. I was actually saying to my husband earlier today, we were talking about what we see going on in this country and how sad it is, because I think left to their own devices, I honestly believe that human beings would just love each other. I think if there was no media and no interference from governments with their own agendas, I honestly believe that human beings would see each other as human beings. I think in the same way that I see you with blonde hair, you've just got blonde hair. And for God's sake, I've got bluish, purple, indigo, crazy hair. It's still just hair. What difference does it make? I think that that's human nature. I think it's human nature to accept each other, to love each other. But there is nonetheless this manipulation. So here's what I was saying to my husband earlier today. We were driving to the shops and I said to him, you know, I remember growing up in apartheid South Africa. And in apartheid South Africa, I grew up in a Jewish household. So in apartheid South Africa, I was not considered white. In apartheid South Africa, Jewish people were very discriminated against. Now, my family, and myself included, never followed the Jewish faith. I would not call myself Jewish from the religious sense. But from an ancestral perspective, obviously, I am ancestrally from a Jewish lineage. In apartheid South Africa, that was, you were not favored. Lots of discrimination and lots of kind of pushing against the Jewish community. The South African apartheid government hated the Jewish community. And it's so interesting that back then I wasn't seen as white. But now I'm seen as white. And now it's like all white people get bunched together and get labeled and mislabeled, certainly in this country. It's very, very strong. The assumption is if you're white, and particularly if you're wealthy, you must have hurt somebody to get where you are. That's the assumption. It's a very unjust assumption, but it certainly is the assumption that happens here. So yeah, South Africa is a beautiful country. It's phenomenal. The people are gorgeous. Their hearts are wide open. They're as real can be. But like any country, politicians come in, they manipulate, they stir people up. And the next thing you know, what could be your best friend is suddenly looking at your skin color and talking about what happened 40 years ago, 50 years ago. It didn't even happen to them. It happened to their parents or their grandparents some of the time. And they blame your skin color, not even you as a person. I wasn't there. I didn't do these things. But I'm blamed because of my skin color, which is more than ironic because during the apartheid time, I was also discriminated against. But there you go. That is South Africa right now in my little nutshell. That's South Africa from my perspective. I can't speak for everybody, but that's my perspective of what's going on. It's kind of crazy. It
Wow.
really is.
Yeah. They went right to, they combined everything, all the crisis right away and brought in the whole
Yeah.
racial war piece, because they had to work us up to that. They had to do that in the US. I don't know about Canada, but in the US they had to do it as two separate crises. First the pandemic, and then they brought in all of the other issues through the whole, the George Floyd killing.
No, here it goes straight racial. Anything happens, in order for government to cover their tracks, it's just too easy to play people's emotions. So rather than government taking responsibilities when they are clearly in the wrong, they just go, oh, stir up all the racial hatred. Look at those white people, remember what they did. And the next thing you know, there's another wave, because all we have here is waves. This is not new for us. What we see going on, certainly in the US, and I'd love to hear from Paula because I don't know what's happening in Canada, but what we see happening in the US, we keep saying, oh, please, this is so South Africa. This is exactly what's been happening here since 1994, since the end of apartheid. This is a strategy. This is a blueprint. This is a blueprint that has been used before. And the blueprint that's being used in the US right now was, I think, trialed out in South Africa in 1994. And it worked really well. It's made people who could be best friends and allies into absolute enemies, where there's no reason, no reason to be enemies. There's no reason for hate other than what governments and media have stirred up. Yeah.
Well, this is also connected. I hope this isn't uncomfortable to bring up, but this is also basically the whole Nazi protocol. This is all the whole rioting and insurgency and overthrow the government and make people, weaken people, make them afraid and make them have to choose a side and all that kind of stuff. And interestingly, the Antifa flag, I don't know if you guys saw this, it was probably
it's exactly
is the same flag. It's a very similar logo and flag to the Nazi flag, and they're just going by this playbook of, okay, this is how we overthrow a government and create civil unrest and chaos. I would love to hear either of you guys' opinion on why you think that these groups, these corrupt politicians, amongst other people in the group, why you think they want this. Like why do they want civil unrest and chaos? Because I think when I post some things, people that maybe haven't been attuned to this are like, maybe they think it's paranoia, like, oh, you just think everybody's against, nobody said that to me, but I hear the collective a lot because of the empathy and the psychic gifts that we all here have. And so I can hear, well, oh, you're paranoid. Oh, yeah, what? The government's nobody's against us. Why? They don't want civil unrest. These are totally unrelated events. It just happened. It's just a coincidence that it happened now. So I would love to hear why you guys think there's chaos being created right now in civil unrest. What your opinion is?
Because people can be controlled. Yeah, Paula, you speak.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. Because when people are in fear, they're easily controlled and manipulated, number one. But number two, they're creating this so that there is an illusion because it's created. They're doing this on purpose. Because I recently saw connections with the Hamas group, the Muslim Brotherhood, taking over the Black Lives Movement. And in fact, it's their campaign. Why are they trying to push all of this unrest? Because then they can look back and say, look at what happened under Mr. Trump's watch.
Mm.
So they're willing for people to die and to let their country burn to stay in power, because Mr. Trump is the first president in about 5 that is not part of the globalist elite or the controllers. He's a free person. And why they hate him so much is because he has caught them committing crimes, not only against their own people in America, their own citizens, but also against humanity across the world. Because we think, a lot of people might think that it's one country against another country, but in fact, they're all bloodlines. They're connected together. So it looks as though you have one country against another country. And they're having, their public persona portrayed or projected. But when, the news television turns off, they are celebrating champagne and having dinner together. So it's an illusion of conflict. Would you agree, Kerry?
100% yes. 100%. Absolutely. These are actors. These are professional, well-made, molded actors who, for the most part, have been prepped for their roles from early childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think that, I think that when people are divided within themselves, it's so easy. It's laughably easy when people hold inner judgment and inner division within themselves to externalize that in the world and to go, oh, well, people with blonde hair are all like this and people with blue eyes are all like that. And, boys are all like this and girls are all like that, to make these sweeping generalizations that build prejudice and judgment. It's all it takes is a couple of well-polished representatives, whether it be royal families or whether it be media personalities or celebrities even, or politicians. It just takes them to create some event and put it in our face and say, oh, look at what's happening in the world. And then people buy into that narrative, hook and line and sinker. They buy into that narrative so easily because there's division within themselves. I can tell you now, if there was wholeness within the individual, it would be very difficult to lead them into division. It would be very, very difficult. They wouldn't see the division, they wouldn't fall for it. But it's an easy ploy by the puppet masters. I call them the 1% because that's all that they are. Mm-hmm. They're 1%. They're 1%, if that actually, of the global population. The 99% are not racially orientated. They are just human beings. They just love and greet each other and meet each other in that space. So we're seeing the meddling of that 1%. And we're seeing what it can do and how easy it is to do when people hold this inherited division within self. It's then second nature to see it and fight it even out there. Because it's an inner conflict that we all have, isn't it? Isn't there an inner conflict within each human being alive right now? And it somehow becomes easier to address that inner conflict when it's outside of the self, because then it's almost like, oh, it's not me. It's not me, it's them. They're the bad ones, whereas if I have to address inner conflict, it's all me, baby. It's all me in here. I'm the only one that can take responsibility for this. And I think it takes a certain kind of courage to do that.
Yeah. It takes a lot of courage to look at your stuff. It really does. It does a lot of courage to look in the mirror and go, oh my goodness, I am aware of my behavior. And often it's like, I'm ashamed of my behavior. I can't believe, or mortified. I've had an experience myself. When I discovered something, I was mortified that I would behave that way. I was mortified that I had that attribute on board. But the beauty in that one moment, because I'm aware, I love it when you catch yourself, right? When you are so aware that you can catch yourself in the moment. In that particular instance, what it was is we had just moved into this apartment, and I like beauty and order. You know, I go through my clothes frequently and I fold I just like order. Not to the point where I've got plastic on my couches and things like that. I like a beautiful space. Things get put back where they belong so you can find them, like practical order. And my son, who was 18 at the time, I would go into his room and I'm instructing him on how he should put his room together, fold his clothes, and he's like, okay, Mom, I love you, but get out. And, you know, basically putting too much stress on myself to get the home together, right? You know, when you move, you've got boxes everywhere. And in that particular situation I was looking at, I actually went into the closet, closed the door, and I started to cry. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a control freak. Like I'm telling him how he should fold his clothes and how he should put his room together. And it's none of my business. It's his space. So I started to cry and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm like that. But here's the gift. At the same time, I had that realization, like my higher self stepped in, and it was like there was this very large being present with the most incredible compassion for me. It was like a big sister, a presence of a really big sister, basically saying, you know, it's okay, my child. Now that you've seen, I can adjust. So that was a huge revelation for me. Looking in the mirror, you know, it's hard to look at your stuff because you would often put that in shame and hide it in the shadows and judge it and beat yourself up for it. But when you can see it and you can feel it, it can be released. And then you don't operate that way anymore. I digress. Sorry, that went off track.
No, I don't think it went off track. I think we don't have to be perfect. It is about awareness. And if people could sit in their awareness of what they're getting triggered by, then they'd be able to sit and look at the big picture of what's happening and not just get sucked into what they're being told is happening. So that's a really important point that you're making, because I think it's, Kerry, you talked about how it's about division within the self and also shame within the self. So people, let's say a white person is going, okay, we got to get involved in this movement, and, you know, and you were talking about, and you weren't necessarily even a part of some of the racial division that happened many years ago in your country, but yet you're being projected some of the blame. So that's the collective shame that people are buying into. And it's shame on a personal level too. I mean, if we would be looking individually at where we have shame in our life, then that wouldn't also be triggering us from the external reality that's going on. So I think it's really important right now that to people to look at the division within, where we have male-female separation or separation from source or God, goddess, and where we're carrying shame, not just about the collective, but our personal life shame. You know, and as we heal that, then we can awaken and see the big picture and not be attached to what we're being fed, which is so much, I think, so important right now, being able to detach from all stories being shared publicly with the same narrative and being able to go, I don't know, is this true for me? Is this really true? Is this what I see around me? You're saying you see lots of love and kindness around you when it comes to people with different colors interacting. And I feel the same way. I don't think it's
I really do.
I don't think it's systemic. I think there's ignorance. I think sometimes, because I live in a neighborhood where it's mostly, you know, it's mostly white people. And so maybe there's ignorance in the way that people talk about things sometimes because they haven't been in certain communities. Because I grew up in projects in Brooklyn, you know, inner city. So I have both perspective. So I can see, okay, there's some ignorance, but that's not racism. There's a difference. Not understanding how something works or how someone thinks or how something you're saying might seem limited is definitely different than racism. So,
yeah, and I can say the same thing for, sorry, Kerry, I can say the same thing for Canada, at least in my, what I witness. I don't see any racism. I don't see it. I just see people being people, living their life. And you're right. Our human nature is to be kind and loving. You know, we really need to celebrate the diversity in life, in humanity, like we celebrate the diversity in nature. You don't get a tulip shouting at a rose because its petals are the wrong color. You know, it's just, you know what I mean? Like if we look at the vast diversity that we can find on the planet naturally, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, I think what makes a really good breeding ground for racism to take hold in is an environment where there is shame. Because in order for blame to be put out into the collective, if blame doesn't have a receptor, it's just going to fall on the floor. No one's going to pick it up. But if there's shame, shame is the receptor for blame. So if I don't hold shame within me, you can blame me until you're blue in the face. It's going to go nowhere. But if I have one iota of shame in me, oh, the guilt that's going to come up. And then, and then in the presence of guilt, I'm either going to go into denial or I'm going to go into apology. I could perhaps even go into resistance and push against it. But the point is if I don't hold shame, blame holds no water in me. So there's a very interesting dynamic that is very global at the moment, and it's the blame-shame dynamic. So it's kind of like, my life has been difficult, it's your fault, you're wrong. That's what I'm seeing playing out in the global scene right now. And there's those people that go, oh no, it is me, I am to blame, I am wrong, oh God, redeem me. And they're looking for redemption from their shame without realizing that that's not available through an external source. The only one that's ever going to redeem you from your shame is you. That is nobody's, because you're just going to create another cycle of karma if you think that your guilt is going to remedy something. It's not. It's just going to repeat. This pendulum that we're seeing swinging right now can swing all day long, from black hate to white hate and back again. It can just keep swinging. But no healing would happen then. And the thing that keeps that pendulum moving is the blame-shame dynamic. So I think there's a lot of that going on at the moment, and I think it's really essential for people to find if there is something within them that might be registering either as blame or as shame. And wow, what if they could all resolve that internally? How different would our external world be? I just want to go and hug everybody and live in not a community of peace. I want to live in a world of peace. You know, I don't want to walk into my neighborhood and know that I'm in love with the people that I see. I want to walk through the world that way. And I'm not an idealist. I know I'm not an idealist. I know that I hold a vision for a new world. And I know that it is within each of our capacity and capability to live in that new world. But it takes for us to break the cycle.
Yeah.
A classic example of Kerry is when, you know, if you put a handful of people, 20 people together of mixed colors, races, whatever, a whole batch of what have you, and you have a situation where, say, a toddler is drowning or in harm, that collective of 20 people will become one organism to save that child. Immediately they will come as one organism, come to the aid of that person. That's true human nature. If there's an accident or a plane crash, people get out of the cars and will rush to assist. It has nothing to do with color or religion or anything. We are a human family, and I am with you 100%. We can do so much better than what we're doing. We really can, because we're our brother's keeper. And what we need is, if we witness someone doing something unkind, that's where the community or the ones that are watching steps in and says, hold on a minute here. That is not inappropriate behavior. Do not hurt that person or what have you. You know, we've been witnessing so many, I've just about seen enough violence of one against another. People hitting each other. I mean, the police are completely under attack. You know, in the U.S. for sure. I don't know what's going on in Africa as far as the policing, but here in Canada, you know, obviously it's a completely different gig than in the U.S. But we just had our leader taking a knee and being in solidarity against police brutality, which has like that's part of what we do, right? We teach resilience to first responders. So now the police forces within Canada have to be prepared for any potential backlash because of what we're witnessing there and what our, you know, leader just did, right?
Wow. Yeah, the Atlanta, well, this is the mainstream news has said a lot of policemen in Atlanta are quitting. Now, I don't know if that's true. I need to look at other sources because sometimes they try in the mainstream news to make things look like a lot of things are happening, so we all join that sentiment. But according to an article I saw, police are starting to quit. Is that happening in any of your areas?
It's definitely not that I have seen here. If it is happening, it hasn't made the news. So here, I haven't seen police being attacked. But I will say that when something trends in the US, it very often ripple relays down here into South Africa. So I wouldn't be surprised if it did come a couple of weeks down the line, but it hasn't hit us yet. No.
Are there riots there?
They're just starting. And they're always fanning the flames. They're always fanning the flames. But the riots are just starting here now. So we'll see what happens. I know from where I'm sitting, I know what the agenda is. I know that the agenda is to create global anarchy through these, I can't even say the word without laughing, peaceful protests.
Yeah.
It's a joke. I can't do it with a straight face. There's nothing peaceful about a riot. It's exactly the same in South Africa. Riots are very commonplace here, by the way. Riots are not something that, you know, would be an anomaly here. Riots often happen in South Africa. They're very brutal. They're very, very violent. When we moved I live in a quiet, delicious little seaside village. It's so precious and beautiful. And we moved in here and nothing had ever happened. And within literal days of moving in here, there was a riot up the road. And we just didn't know what had hit us, because coming from a big city, this is the sort of thing you'd imagine in a big city. It occurred here in this tiny little village. And we realized, man, this modus operandi, this blueprint is it has seeped into South African culture. So that again, here they call it peaceful protests, which is just part of the joke. And part of why mainstream media is truly the enemy of the people, because they create a perception that is not real. But nonetheless, riots are very, very commonplace here. They burn tires in the middle of the road. They blockade entire roads so nobody can travel. The whole idea is to intimidate. You know, they throw petrol bombs into houses, into cars. It goes crazy. But it's very, very commonplace here to have riots. So I can see that globally there is a push to create man against man, brother against brother, black against white,
Woman
Asian
against country against country.
Yes, absolutely. It 100%. And you know what? If we just take a moment together collectively, forget the damn color, if we just take a moment and stop worrying about what your skin is made of, because honest to God, it's irrelevant, we would realize, wait a minute, we have been played. We, humanity, not South Africans, not Americans, not Europeans, globally, we have been played. Wouldn't that bring us together? Wouldn't that bring us into each other's hearts, and wouldn't then realize, oh, I was taught to hate you, or I was taught perhaps that you were the cause, your skin color was the cause of all my misery, or I was taught my skin color was the cause of your misery, and hence my shame or my guilt, or whatever the case might be. But if we realized that we'd been played, I think that there would be such togetherness. And I know it's possible, that togetherness. I know it's possible. I don't know what it's going to take. Like, I don't know if there's going to be a mass event, if there's going to be the threat of alien invasion, that suddenly we realize, oh, we're not different race groups, we're one planetary system. Oh, well, that, because I'm telling you, in the click of a finger, people would then comprehend we're the human race. Oh, got it. Because that's the light bulb that needs to go off for everybody, is that we are the human race. But I think that when we realize we're being played, however it occurs, fake alien invasion, fake race wars, I don't know what it's going to take, but that realization will ultimately dawn upon humanity. And at that point, whew, we've crossed a hurdle. I think this is the final big playing card that they've got, is the race wars.
Yeah, they
I
don't
don't know
have
how
anything
you guys
else.
feel.
Yeah, no, I agree. My understanding is they don't have access to any new plans. It's the same old. And you know that they're in checkmate because their time is over. Yeah. So everything they do backfires. But for me, like it feels to me like there's so much resistance and fighting against each other right now, you know, that it feels like it'll get to the point with riots all over the world, and it'll get to a point where people are like, please, God, help me. It'll get to the point where, for the love of God, if you are there, please come help us. Like, how do we get out of this? What it feels like. Because let's switch gear maybe a little bit, right? There was incredible phenomena in the UK yesterday. I don't know if you guys saw it. That massive.
I did see it. Yeah.
Oh, wasn't that beautiful?
What is it? I didn't see it.
It was like an orb that formed. They were able to get the whole thing on camera. It was an orb the size of a rainbow.
Beautiful.
The woman that was filming it was crying, but she was over emotional with what she was witnessing, obviously impacted by it. And there was thunder and lightning around. It was really incredible.
Yeah.
Some people believe the orbs are beings. They're an actual alien species, that orbs themselves, or they can come, sometimes it's like an angelic energy. I don't know what you guys believe.
Well, I don't know how you feel, Paula, but this was kind of like a portal. This was huge.
It felt like a massive gateway. Because I'm under the understanding that our planet is fully engulfed in the energy of truth. And there's so much light flooding in now. So absolutely more portals letting in. So that all of those dirty little secrets, if you wish, whatever we have hidden behind our backs as individuals and as a collective, is now coming up to be seen, to be cleared. That's what it feels like to me. So the more, in my world, the more chaos I witness externally, it's the closer we are getting to the shift in consciousness, when we will indeed, I will see Kerry as my sister, my soul sister, and you as my sister. Because if we knew each other as family, we would never make a product that would rip you off. We would never create something that would be toxic, not only to you and your family, but to the planet we live in. We would make the absolute best vacuum cleaner in the world that would last you 40 years, that we could replace and recycle each part. So it might cost you $100, but it's yours for your life. And you could probably hand it down as like a, you know, I'm being, you know, kind of funny with that, but we can do better at caretaking each other. I think point in shifting consciousness, we're going to get to the point where we're going to understand that the true integrity of humanity is that when one suffers, we all suffer.
Yeah.
It's not okay for one to be a multi-gajillion trillionaire when someone else is starving.
Well, that's
Yes.
the real division. The real division is not about skin. They're trying. These global elite are trying to make it about skin, but it's actually a financial division. That's the truth. That's where corruption lies, and it's both white and black. Having there's white and black poor, there's white and black rich, and that's where if we start to clear that divide and start addressing that issue, well, then the global elite, the 1%, will they'll have to really step up and make a change, because that's one of the main real problems, I think. That creates suffering. Go on. What were you saying?
Well, that's why they used wealth, the 1%. They've used wealth as power. Wealth stopped being about a financial tool to buy material things. When you're that elite kind of wealthy, that 1% kind of wealthy, this is, you've got everything you could ever possibly need. This is no longer about money. This is about power. And it's the power to control people. And that's exactly what they've used. That's why 6 corporations own the global media houses, because it takes power to create a global narrative and have it be so convincing that people watch these really polished media presenters and go, oh, feed me some more, feed me some more. You know, there's an entire plan, and it's at its center is financial power, which is ultimately then translated as power over people. And I think that as we move forward into a new earth, people have often asked me, do I see that there would still be money, for example, like a financial exchange on New Earth? In New Earth, would we still operate by the same fiat system we do today? The answer for me is a categoric no, because money has been a Babylonian magic system. It hasn't been, there's been no fairness in the monetary system. And so when we begin not to wait for a financial shift, but to create the inner shift that allows for abundance and equality to flow through you and be represented through your body, then yes, then we can walk a new paradigm, walk into a new way of being, which then wouldn't be money-centered, but would rather be humanitarian-centered, humanitarian-orientated. How can I help you? It would only be a return to our true nature, actually, because our true nature is, what can I do to support you? Oh, you need radishes. Oh, you need potatoes. You need pumpkins. I'm a gardener. I can do that for you. You know, the thrill that I would get if you ate my vegetables would be equaled by the thrill you would get when you did something of value in my home. So this is the true nature of humanity, which we are in the process of returning to.
Yeah.
But part of that process has to be equalizing money. But before money can be equalized, we have to create inner equality. That's going to be the next hurdle. But the very cool thing is that the next hurdle that I'm talking about is not like, oh, way out there in the distance. We're literally at that hurdle right now.
Yeah, right.
It's right here. It's right here. You have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to go but through it. And so go, baby, go. It's going to feel crazy and out of control and scary. And the best thing that you can do is be the vulnerable mess that you might feel that you are. Because as most people who are listening will know, 10 seconds later, you go, oh, I'm totally fine. What was that all about? And then you could fall apart again, but then you're fine. This roller coaster, this crazy cosmic roller coaster that we're on at the moment is part of the organic process of working through all of that stuck debris that's been hovering in our body matrix. We're letting it go. We're working toward clearing the next hurdle, which is creating, first of all, unification within self. And with unification within self comes equality within self. Unification and equality. within self. Those two things eliminate the race wars and they eliminate the financial control. Then we really have the power. Then we truly walk in the power of the human beings that we came here to be. And then we can sip lemonade and talk about a crazy time on planet Earth when people want to kill each other over the color of their skin.
It really is quite insane when you put it that way, right?
I've seen what you're talking about. It's possible.
You know,
I've lived in Mount Shasta, California. I don't know if you've heard of Mount Shasta.
Definitely, yeah.
And that community there, it's like that. Everybody supports. You have a gift. Every like the whole community will go, oh, they'll, like I used to teach voice lessons because I'm also a singer, and people would all come to me for voice lessons throughout the whole town. It was like I was the town voice teacher, and that's how it worked there. And like you said, if you need something, it could be food, it could be whatever your skill set. If you're good at organizing people, you would get a job there. No, but you would think in a small town with hardly a large population that how could you survive? But when you go there, you have a way to survive because everyone supports each other. So it's definitely possible. It exists. I've seen it exists in Mount Shasta. If it exists there, then that kind of energy could spread to other communities instead of this other stuff spreading. Speaking of the financial piece, a lot of these autonomous zones are starting to spread, and they're putting them in areas where it is more poverty oriented. But then Beverly Hills in California, they're not allowing any riots. No autonomous zones are allowed there. They just passed a bill. So it's like, it's that separation. Like, okay, if you're in Beverly Hills and you're a celebrity and you're wealthy, you can be protected. But if you're in Portland, which is where the next autonomous zone is, been building up, or in this part of Seattle, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, what does this remind the listeners of? This is Hunger Games. Creating poverty districts, and where Snow, you know, in the movie Hunger Games, Snow said that the only thing that was more powerful than fear was hope. He had to make sure that he crushed the idea of hope, right? But look how ridiculous that movie is. People think that it's just Hollywood, it's entertainment. The rich elite pit the children from different districts against each other to the death. And this is entertainment. What are we watching play out in our world? It's exactly the same thing. What you're basically saying is, right, the wealthy elite in one part of a country is protected. You can't riot here. You can't peacefully protest here, but you can go down the road down there.
Yeah.
We'll let you do it down there and let it burn.
Well, they're trying to create that. And I'd like to put it out there that, you know, it's going to be dismantled. You know, we're part of the collective. Anyone who's listening, we can hold a different vision and see, okay, that's what they're trying to do. But in our meditation, in our prayers, we can see, no, this is halted, this is stopped. But they are definitely trying to do that. They're trying to create that division in that way. And that's the whole, for anyone who's listening and thinks that defunding the police is a good idea, because believe it or not, I have some people following me that do, because they think, oh, it'll be more peaceful. Like they think that if we get a privatized police, that, oh, well, we're not going to have these problems. But it's actually not that at all. It's that those privatized police companies can be hired by people that are wealthy or people that have certain agendas and they want certain things to occur in society. So, okay, they can be directed without regulation. So it's not, things are not what they seem. Things are not what they seem.
No, they're not. They're not indeed. And that's where, you know, we really want to encourage and invite folks to go, okay, does this make sense? Like really, going back to what Kerry said, you know, we have so much more in common than what we have that are different. You know, we have a heartbeat, we have DNA, we bleed, we love, we cry, we grieve, you know, we pray in our own unique ways. We dance, we sing, we all want joy, we all want love in our life. why would you ever deny that in another? You know, I think that is the greatest sin, to deny love another, to deny them the opportunity to step into their highest potential, because we clearly have an opportunity to step into our highest potential for sure. We can do so much better by being kind. Really, yeah. It's a very interesting time on the planet. Very interesting time.
Well, I want to go back to something Kerry said. She said, talking of interesting, she said, well, this is their, I think you were saying this, that this might be their last thing that they're trying to do, but then you mentioned something else. You said fake alien invasion. So have you guys, are you talking about Project Bluebeam?
Yeah, I don't know if you have any more intel than I do on that, Paula, but I do know with certainty that that was absolutely part of the end game. And where we are right now is in the end game. So part of the end game plan was 100% the fake alien invasion, wherein we would be attacked from so-called another species. And of course, that would give governments massive control, because human beings would be in panic and would look to the governments and go, save us, save us. Meantime, back at the ranch, that would have been orchestrated either by the governments alone or the governments working with a malevolent non-terrestrial collective. So that was the fake alien invasion, was absolutely on the cards. As far as I know, it's off the cards now. Paula, I don't know if you have any more intel,
Yeah, no,
but as far as I know, tell me, what do you know?
Same intel it used to be, but now they don't have any comms anymore. They don't have gear. Most of it has been dismantled.
They can't pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they've put everything into the race war. The race war was not supposed to be the grand finale. The grand finale was supposed to be the fake alien invasion.
Right.
But because that's off the cards now, all that they've got is people with different amounts of melanin in their skin. That's it. That's what they're playing at. They're playing at skin tone and racial division. If you really look at it, it is ludicrous. But unfortunately, there's enough people at the moment, there's enough people on planet Earth who are in such inner division, such inner turmoil, and they're either very polarized in blame or they're very polarized in shame. Those will be the players right now, will be those who feel great amounts of blame, those who feel great amounts of shame. They will be involved in this racial divide. But that's it. Eventually, this is going to lead to oneness. There's nowhere else this can go. There is no, and I want everybody listening to really get that. There's nowhere else this can go. People sometimes look at me and say, but Kerry, why do you know this stuff and yet you're so calm? Because I know how this ends. And this can only end in unity. It can only end in love. And I know that you two sisters know exactly the same thing.
100%.
There's only one ending here, and it's finding our humanness, finding the family in humanity, and really embracing each other from the heart space once again, just like it was always meant to be. And that's it. It will not, the racial divide will not maintain itself on planet Earth for much longer. So they've got to give it all that they've got for this tiny little window. And I reckon between now and August is the window. That's my sense of it. I think that between now and perhaps within the first couple of days of August, like round about the 10th to the 14th, somewhere there, that window is really the prime time for chaos and polarity. So they're milking it and taking advantage in the vain hope that this is going to swing things into the favor of 1%. It will not, it cannot, because this is no longer just about planet Earth. This is much bigger than planet Earth. This is about our entire galaxy. This is about our entire universe. What's happening here has a ripple effect on the entire galaxy, which in turn affects the entire universe. And from a galactic decree, we're done with this level of manipulation. This is just the cleanup that we're seeing. This is just, yes, it's chaos, yes, it's crazy, but believe it or not, this is the cleanup, where it's kind of like purging. The darkness is giving it all that they've got. Let them do it. It's okay. It ends in love.
My guides call it the final parade of fear.
Yeah.
It's like the final hurrah. Let's see how frightened we can be. And they also say that humanity's suffering can be reduced to a single idea. And that is that we've agreed to the idea that we are separate from our source and from each other. That's really that's what they say, and it can be reduced to that idea. And so to your point, Kerry, if we look at our civilization and this Babylonian rule that we've had for eons of time, right? That's the Sumerian culture that happened way back then. When you have a civilization like us that is stuck, you have to have outside intervention. So the divine will come back and claim what is rightfully our divine birthright, which is that we can indeed achieve God consciousness or Christ consciousness, and that we're meant to create, but not I'd like a boat or a house, but it's like I want to create beauty with my fellows, with my family members that are here, and we will soon learn, that we need not fight. We need not be in combat with each other because we are here together,
Yeah.
I think the overall, oh, go on.
Sorry. No, you go.
I was just going to say, I think the overall sentiment I've been hearing with all three of us is that it's so much about the internal healing so that the external hologram can change, and that we have so much more power than we realize. Even if we have to go through some things over the next few months, we actually can create, even through all the intensity, a shield. If we're doing our inner work and our inner connecting and merging with source, we can, create the field of energy around us that keeps us protected or keeps us sent to the right area. For example, I know in California, a lot of people are leaving here. And so people are being guided to go to different places, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, so what are we feeding the field, right? We know in heart math, right, we teach that we have an electromagnetic energy grid. So with every heartbeat, the heart creates a spark of electricity. It's powered from within. It's its own power source. And by default, physics, mathematics, when you have electricity, magnetic is created. So that gives us our electromagnetic energy field. And it's like a carrier wave, right? So we're broadcasting information everywhere we walk. What our thoughts are, what our beliefs are, what our heal our own hurts. What you do for yourself, you do for another. So when we can heal our own hurts, transcend the shames and the blames and the guilts, transcend that, understand it. When we can heal our own hurts and repair our relationship with source so that the kingdom of heaven is created within, then it can become without. Because I heard a long time ago, I think it was Barbara Marciniak, who channels the Pleiadians. I think, I could be wrong. But she shared that one person aligned to source is more powerful than 1 million people in fear. That influence is so strong in the field. So what are we feeding the field? If we have a field, right? How are you showing up? Are you screaming at the world, or are you singing in harmony? Anyway.
Yep. That's why I use mantra, because the mantras, and I put them on my page a lot, because the mantras change the field. They change the magnetic energy, they change the consciousness, they change the meridians, so that, and they do it in a way that it's got like a magical component to it, because there's one way, which is processing through stuff, and then sometimes we need something faster because life is happening fast before our eyes. Things are happening every single day. And so the mantras will come in and start to dissolve these energies and these issues in a really, really hyper speed way. So that's a tool I like to use. What were you going to say, Kerry?
Just how absolutely powerful we are and how easy this is. This is easy. This is easy. I know because I see what you see. I look at the news too. And as much as I see love in my community around me, I know how easily they can be riled up, how easily they can be led into a particular belief system. I know that. And I know that we're seeing all kinds of craziness. So it looks as if we're seeing something so insurmountable right now. But I would love for everybody to just focus inward. To just, even if it was for 10 or 15 minutes. If for 10 or 15 minutes, you just started with your hand on your chest and you just felt the body heat from your hand warm up your chest so that you could become aware of your heart. And you could become aware that your heart that's beating beneath your hand in your chest is made up of physical matter, material, organic material that truly is made of stars. Your heart is not a black heart or a white heart or an Indian heart. It's not a Jewish heart, it's a heart. Your heart is made of universal stuff because we are universal beings. And if you think about your skin, your hands, just look at your hands and think, my parents live in my hands because it's their genealogy that created these hands, and it's the parents before them and before them and before them. And I think we all know this, that if we really look into our ancestry, there is not one race group in our biological ancestry. Follow that lineage of yours and you're going to find that you were once Black and Indian and Caucasian and Mongolian and God knows what else. We, each one of us, are not pure to our race group. And I know that offends a lot of people to think, they'll say, oh, I am totally Jewish. I am totally whatever I identify myself as. You're actually not. That's just an expression of who you are right now, but in your totality, you are universal. In your totality, you are an amalgamation of everything. And once we can wrap our head around the idea that as a human being, we are this conglomerate of all races, then we can even go beyond that and say, but wait a minute, I'm also Syrian and Pleiadian, for example, and Lyran and God knows where else. We are universal beings, but it starts here. It starts just this. Put your hand on your heart and connect into the home that exists within you as you. You are this living light source. As Paula so beautifully puts, we are this electromagnetic energy field. But what makes this electromagnetic energy field? It's God stuff. It's God stuff. We want to sit and talk about races. That's just ridiculous. Let's talk about our beingness, our oneness, the totality of who we are, because that's exciting. That's thrilling to think of the totality of you as opposed to this dissected, segmented version of you that has a storyline that you've just oversold and overly identified with. So we can only go to love. That's all I can tell you. We can only end in love.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Glorious ending and beginning that shall be, right?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great.
So
yeah,
we're kind of winding down here. I have to go and take my son to to the beach with his friends in a little bit. But Kerry, can you tell us how people can reach you and what you do, with your spiritual healing work and things like that?
My website is easy. It's my name, kerryk.net. So Kerry K, Kerry kerryk.net. And on kerryk.net, there's a number of different resources. So you can look at my various YouTube content. There's also a number of courses. Some of them are like a 1-hour course, and some of them are much longer. Like there's currently an 8-week course that I'm busy running. Paula's busy doing that course with me, and that's lots of fun. We're doing a course with the Galactic Federation, and we are working toward recoding this physical vessel to be an ascension vehicle, because that's really what it is. We're just aiding the process for those overachievers that want to accelerate their process. That's the course that I'm busy doing, but there's loads. There's something for everybody. So go in and have a look if you're interested on the kerryk.net shop, and you'll see a whole variety of content that's pre-recorded or going to be done in live session. Lots of stuff there.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And of course, Kerry is joining the Divine Feminine Roundtable this Sunday as well. So that'll be out likely by Monday. So that'll be a great conversation to support the collective in helping to stay neutral, being able to see different perspectives, and just holding space so that we can calm and soothe the emotions. Cool things down and bring people home to the heart.
Yeah.
Where things are heavenly. Because the only peace we're going to find now is inside. You're not going to find peace and heaven out there unless you create it for yourself, being in nature, making those choices. So it's been a lovely chat. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I'm so grateful. Thank you guys for coming on this morning and doing this.
Pleasure. It's your morning. It's my evening. I'm about to go make supper for the kids.
Oh, that's right.
I just love it. I love how we are all different worlds rolled into one. You know, we're summer and winter. We're northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. We're morning and evening. And here's a living representation of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, ladies. Great to
Thank you.
connect. And
Thank you for inviting me.
Again soon.
Thank you. See you soon. Thank you. Blessings. Bye.
Bye.